If Instagram was deleted tomorrow and all your posts disappeared and all your advice disappeared with respect to new parenthood and transitioning into the family unit, what advice would you give them if you had 1 minute? What would you say?
Fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
Yes.
So yeah, if I had 1 minute, I think it would be prioritize your relationship with your partner. That is the best thing you could do for your children for a few reasons. The first reason is when there's warmth, love, affection, and peace in the home, children feel more emotionally secure. The second is we are our children's first role models because we are who they're exposed to most of the time. So whatever they see becomes normality for them.
Yes.
So when they witness healthy relationships, healthy communication, conflict resolution, they are more likely to learn these skills because we don't have a platform to learn these skills anyway, right?
Yeah.
Nobody teaches us how to do it. So we learn from what we observe. So if you work on having a strong, healthy bond with your partner, your children not only feel safe and secure, but they learn this from you and they will go on to have healthier relationships in their lives.
Hey everyone, I'll get right to it. This episode is for parents who have a young family and for partners who are expecting. On the episode with me today is Rakhi Beekrum. She is a registered counseling psychologist, speaker, mental health advocate, and online educator. She specializes in a number of fields, but in particular, today we are chatting about the adjustment to life's transitions and adjusting to parenthood. We dive deep into topics such as working moms versus staying at home moms, the shifts and inclusions of additional aspects of our identity, such as a father and a husband, and a wife and a mother, tips and strategies for finding common ground, red flags, when is it time to seek help, as well as conflict resolution, when is the right time to resolve conflict and how do we best go about finding common ground, as well as the importance of self-care and having quality adult time. This is a very pertinent episode and something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. So I think you'll find it quite useful. Rakhi's words of wisdom have garnered her quite a large social media following on Facebook and on Instagram in particular. So please check her out in the show notes below if you'd like to follow her for all upcoming posts and content. And you can also go and see her directly if you'd like to. Finally, a lot of work goes into the show on a weekly basis to provide you with free and interesting content. So if you found this episode useful, at the end of the episode, please won't you share it? It goes a long way into getting more traction, and with more traction, the guests get better and better. Thank you. Enjoy. Rakhi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clinton. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So speaking off air, my wife Lisa and I, we have a little toddler. He's 21 months now, Grayson. And it's really topical for us transitioning into new parenthood, being a married couple, then transitioning into an expansion of the family unit. And that's what we're here to chat about today, and that's what I'm really looking forward to in particular. But can you give me some background as to how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so I've been in private practice for 16 years now. I think I was always a good listener, so I think I've always had the qualities that attracted me to the profession. When I was in high school, I started to suffer with panic attacks, debilitating. And unfortunately, back then, there wasn't social media. We didn't have the internet or ease of access to information. So I felt very alone, very misunderstood. And I wish I had access to the information I do have today. And so I think that's what really pushed me into this career, because I also wanted to do something different that would ensure that nobody felt alone and misunderstood with any kind of mental health condition, which is again why I am as vocal as I am on social media and other media platforms, and why I appreciate opportunities such as this to maybe speak about topics. And you've chosen a topic that very few people actually ask about, but is one of the most common struggles with couples today.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that blew my mind, is when you enter into a marriage, for example, everybody says, go for marriage counseling before you get married, understand the journey that you're about to embark on. And then you decide to have your first child, and then they say, no, go to antenatal classes, prepare yourselves for how to look after the child, etc., etc. But not once has anybody ever suggested to us, and similarly to other people that I know, you should go for some counseling, not because there's a problem, but because the transition that's going to happen is going to be notable in your lives. And if you don't have the frameworks and the tools necessary to deal with those problems and obstacles effectively, it can be quite a lot of friction in the household. In a time that is already quite turbulent, sleep is on the decline, sleep is disruptive. There's a variety of hormonal changes that are happening as well. So we're not on the same playing field that we once were on, and now there's more balls in the air.
Absolutely.
And I thought, wow, this is going to be a fantastic opportunity to have that conversation. So tell me, why do you think it is, firstly, that more people don't talk about this transition into the family unit?
I guess because we're always told that babies are a real blessing, they're a gift from God. So I guess we feel guilty to admit that it can be really difficult for us. But two things can be true at the same time. You can love your kids more than anything in the world and still miss the version of you that existed, either individually or as a couple before kids came along. Also on social media, perhaps we always see the highlights and maybe it looks so easy for everyone else that we're embarrassed to speak about it because we think it's just us.
Yeah, I've seen that there's a lot of really constructive content around what the woman, the mother, goes through in particular, the struggles that she has to endure, the guilt between the old version of herself and the new version. You throw in the career on top of that. Do you become a stay-at-home mom? Do you continue with being a working woman? The guilt associated with then going back to work, and the struggle there with, okay, do you look after your child? Does this mean you're a bad mom if you're going back to work? All of these things, there's a lot of content around that, and rightly so. But then there's not a lot of stuff around, okay, this is going to put a strain on your marriage. There's going to be times when, for example, I'll give you a personal example. So Lisa stayed at home for the best portion of the first year, when Grayson was around, and we made that decision as a family, and then I was going to be the one, I was going to do the working. And whilst I think we're very grateful that we're able to do that, number one. Number two, I don't think we'd change it either. I think if we decide to have a second child, then we would take a similar sort of approach. But there were changes, like, for example, my day and her day were so completely different. Whereas before, so when we'd come home, we both needed similar things. Whereas now, at least in the first year in particular, my needs coming home were completely different to hers because her day was so much different to mine. And nobody's needs are more important than the other. They were just so different.
Yes.
Is that a common pattern that you see amongst new parents?
Absolutely. And I think because we mostly look at things from our own perspective, and because our capacity is reduced so much, we can only think about what we are not getting. So we focus on what the other's getting that we don't. For example, you get to interact with other adults in your day, whereas the stay-at-home mom is interacting with a baby who maybe the communication's one way only.
Yeah.
Or for example, you come home and maybe you just want to switch off because you've had a rough day, but she needs you to take over because she's been with the baby all day. So that's very often where couples start to clash and there's kind of misunderstanding or they feel unsupported because I guess our plates are so full and we can't take on understanding a different perspective.
Yeah, that's so true. Let's transition then, the modern day working woman, okay? Previously it was pretty cut and dried. 50 years ago, you'd have your child, the dad would go and work, the mom would stay at home, and that was it. For a number of reasons. Number one, because financially it was achievable then. Yeah. Now not so achievable. Explain to me, in your experience, the different challenges that the different structural units face. So, for example, a woman who's deciding to stay at home, a mother who's deciding to stay at home, versus a mother who is then going to go back to work. What are the pros and cons of both of those in the context of maintaining a successful marriage?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think it might differ, not just purely on whether you're a working mom or you're a stay-at-home mom, but also it depends on many other factors. For example, how healthy your relationship is, whether you have healthy communication, and also what support systems you have. Because if you have a support system, you're feeling fulfilled in yourself. So where it might differ is a working mom might feel that she's neglecting her family by going to work. She's feeling exhausted, and when she comes home, and we only have a limited amount of time and energy, so we feel guilty that we've missed out on being there for the child, and the children can't do things for themselves. So she might tend to do things for the child, as opposed to prioritizing the husband, who's an adult and can do things for himself. And that is where there is a lack of quality time. So it doesn't mean that she prefers it that way, but that is just what makes sense to her, might leave a husband feeling neglected in that way.
Yes.
So a stay-at-home mom, on the other hand, might feel that while the husband has gone to work, and it might be the arrangement like you've had, that I go to work and I will provide and you take care of the kids in the home, but his shift ends at some point and hers actually doesn't, because home and baby are still there. So there might be some resentment that feeds into the marriage. And when there's resentment, it creeps up into every other aspect of your life, the way in which you speak to each other. So especially if there's no open communication or problem solving around it, every little thing might become a problem.
That's so crucial. What you've just tapped into there is the problem solving. Is having arguments or fighting, for the want of a better term, is not necessarily a bad thing in a marriage, but rather it's the way in which you fight, argue, let's say, let's use a better phrase, like reaching a mutual ground or reaching consensus. The method and the way in which you go about that as a husband and wife is the most important part, rather than necessarily the random fights or arguments themselves. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. So it's, as you said it's all couples argue. I think it is completely necessary to argue, because we're not being individuals if we always want the same thing. Or if we're not arguing, it means we're keeping things in and we're not being open and honest with the other person, which is a problem in a marriage. But it is how we have these arguments. So it is it constructive versus destructive? So are you always criticizing, as opposed to stating how you feel, asking for what you want, stating where you're finding a problem and asking, can we resolve this issue?
Yeah. So how would one go about doing that? Like broaching a topic that might be a bit uncomfortable. You know that it's going to be a bit of a gnarly one. How does one go about navigating that as a team, to say, okay, these are my needs, this is an opinion that I have, we live together and we're going to live together for the rest of our lives, and we've got a child together, so it's important that you know this thing, so that we can then decide, okay, what are we going to do about it? What's a good way to go about something like that?
So before you even have that conversation, you need to think it through yourself. So allow yourself to feel whatever emotions you feel about it, and then think about what kind of resolution would you like to this issue. And that's what makes it constructive, as opposed to just complaining about something, as if you always do this, or you never do this, or I have to do this by myself. So think about it yourself, and then timing is crucial. So there might be no good time to have a difficult conversation, but there are worse times. So if someone's looking at their phone, it's the worst time to speak to them. So do not start speaking to someone who's distracted by their phone or something else. If you could see they've just walked in from a stressful day, that is not the time to have a conversation. If they're hungry, so rather say that I would like to discuss this topic. I'd like us to speak about maybe sharing the load more fairly at home. Is this a good time? Or can you suggest a good time? Now, you know your partner better than anyone else. If your partner's an avoidant person and is not going to let you know, so don't say, let me know when we can speak, because they probably will not let you know. So you can suggest a time and ask them to always ask if they have an alternate time. So the timing really matters. And in timing, it's establishing that you know what is going to happen in the time, so you're both prepared for it. And so there's no excuse, and there can't be defensiveness. So the next thing would be how you say it. So if you want something, you're asking for something. So in order to reach a positive outcome, you want to ask in a way that the person actually wants to give you what you would like, right? So you can't criticize someone into getting what you would like from them.
Yeah.
So how you say it matters. If you don't want a defensive response, say it in a way that is easy to hear. So an appropriate or useful way that I always recommend is I talk. I feel overwhelmed by everything on my plate right now. I would like us to discuss a way of sharing the load more lightly. Or I feel overwhelmed by the load on my plate, and I realize that these are the things that I'm capable of doing right now, but these are the things that I would like someone else to take over. Can we chat about that? So you're actually going in with a problem-solving mindset. I've already thought about what I want. Yes, you're open to discussion and negotiation about it. Sometimes it might be your partner that's going to take over that, but sometimes you might have to brainstorm a different solution to the problem. But it's recognizing that you're not fighting each other. You are two people fighting for the same thing. Maybe you're fighting for a peaceful home. So it's not what we're fighting about, it's what are we fighting for?
Yeah, and what are you working towards?
Yes.
I love that, because we have to be congruent and working towards the same thing, right? If we're not, then that's obviously a whole nother discussion altogether.
Yeah. And so in destructive arguments, I think that's what we forget. We start to fight as if we're fighting each other, as opposed to we are on the same team and we are tackling a problem together. The problem is division of labor, for example.
Yeah, when it's destructive, there's a winner and a loser.
Yes.
Or at least people are going in with that mindset, I'm going to prove her wrong, or I'm going to prove him wrong, and make him see my way or make her see
And with
my
that
way.
mindset, everyone loses,
Yeah.
including the kids.
Yes, so I think it obviously goes without saying, in my opinion at least, that it's not a good time to have those discussions whilst the child is awake.
Absolutely. So, you need to find a time when the child is asleep or somewhere else to have those discussions. And your tone of voice really matters when you're having these discussions as well.
Do the kids can pick it up, those tones and that energy?
Children are very sensitive. I guess because as adults we have so much in our minds that maybe we aren't as receptive to what's going on around us, but children are. And remember, children think that everything is about them. So think about a little kid, right? They cry and their needs get met. That's all they have to do. So they think the world revolves around them when they're little. So when they see the parents upset, shouting in a bad mood, they think it's about them. So that's the last thing you want, your child to think that you're arguing because of them.
Yeah. Something that sprung to mind then when you were talking about conflict resolution is the importance of maybe sitting with something first before you bring it to the table. So, and correct me if I'm wrong in my way of reasoning this through, if I've got an issue about X, it might not be the best idea to then verbalize that immediately in the moment, but sit with X for a day or two and reason it through. That allows the emotion to subside. You can look at the problem a bit more logically. Okay, is it a me thing? Is it a you thing? Is it a bit of both thing? And then sit with it and a couple of days later say, hey, this happened on Monday. It's something that I want to chat about. It's not major, and we don't need to chat about it now, but I would like to chat about it quite soon. Is that something that people should try to do at least, to sit with it for a couple of days?
Excellent. You're doing better already. See, you came in knowing this. Yeah, so that is it. So don't sit with it for too long a time, because something else might come up and then we're a lot more reactive to it. So yes, sit with it for a day or two so you are able to process it in the time. Not stew on it, not replay conversations in your mind, but like going inward, reflecting on how you're feeling about it and what you would ideally like in the situation.
Yeah. How important is it to identify the changing in roles, and the changing of identity is probably a better word. How do we go about becoming aware of those two different identities and then understanding when one of those has become a little bit out of balance?
So in our lives, we all actually wear many different hats. So while it might be wife and mother, it might also be sister, daughter, employer, employee, or whatever other roles you have. And we don't give equal amounts of time or energy to everything because that's just not how life works, and that might not also be necessary. So I think it's important individually to reflect on what role is maybe a priority at any point in time. Priority doesn't mean it's the only thing we focus on, but it's more important than something else. But it's recognizing that we're still playing other roles, and what are we able to give to those roles at that point in time? And is there some congruency between what we're giving and what is needed or expected from us? And that is where the communication comes in. It's the communication of needs. It's asking for what you would like. And then maybe having an honest discussion about whether that is at all possible at the time, what has to give for that to be possible, or finding a middle ground as to how your needs can be met in those roles. Remember, you were husband and wife before you were mom and dad. So I think it's and you will continue to be that long after your kids have flown the nest. So it really is important to preserve that relationship. And yes, we will change and evolve over time because there are different versions of us in different stages of life. And it's also knowing yourself and knowing your partner through those stages so you don't feel a disconnect during that time.
Yeah. So then would it be important to then make it a priority that you carve out husband and wife time without the child?
Yes.
Just some adult time to go for a coffee, go for a dinner, go for a night out somewhere, just to reconnect on that level. And how important is it that new parents prioritize that, even if it's once a month, once every 2 weeks, once every 6 weeks, whatever that couple needs?
Yeah.
How important is that?
Extremely. I think we see it as counterintuitive because we think that we have a baby and everything should revolve around the baby. And yes, a baby has needs that can't be fulfilled themselves, but it depends on the support systems you have available. So even if that time has to be time at home, I think it's the importance that you're making time for each other, to connect with each other as adults, not as mom and dad.
Yeah.
And where conversations aren't just about the baby or just about parenting.
That's important. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, please continue.
And sometimes we feel guilty. So when I suggest this to parents because they haven't been doing it and they felt disconnected, and something they struggle with, even when they do get to the point of they're going out for dinner, they're dressing up for each other and going out to dinner, all they talk about is the baby. And so I say, well, the rule is you're not allowed to talk about the child. Like, have other conversations. And it might be difficult at first, but that's really important to continue to see each other and to interact on a different level.
Yeah. And I think having the awareness and almost setting the rules of engagement prior to that, if it's something that you have to work on. Yeah, you're so right. Being able to allocate sort of adult time and to have that and to set that as an example for the children that are in the household of what a healthy, sustainable marriage looks like.
Yeah.
Not then a dysfunctional marriage, and setting that as an example for the kids going forward. You posted a very interesting post the other day that I saw about needs, and I can't remember the exact context, but it was like I needed water, I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, and then so you were thirsty, and then everybody and then gave you a whole bunch of other stuff. They gave you this thing and that thing, and those things on its own, if you need them and wanted them, are really nice things, but that wasn't what you needed at the time. All you wanted was water, and the rest of the stuff was worthless.
Yes.
How do we go about letting our partners know, this is what I need at the moment?
So asking clearly and directly. So something I suggest to all couples in all stages of their life and marriage is, towards the end of your week, just have a small check-in with two things. The first thing is telling them what you're grateful for or appreciate that they've done in the week. So thank you for putting your towel into the laundry basket instead of it lying on the bed. And then telling them what you would like them to do or try to do better in the week to come. And when it's phrased in the positive, we're more likely to want to do it. And it isn't just criticism. It's thanking someone and then making a request for what you would like. So I think that's quite a nice way. So it also means during the week, you have to look out for what your partner's getting right, because it's very easy to notice when they're doing something that we don't want them to do.
Yeah, and if you're constantly being told the things that you aren't doing right, then it makes you want to do the things right less.
Absolutely, and you feel disillusioned.
No, I think that's such an important point. But at the same time, it's about acknowledging that everybody has their different needs, and those needs might change. And also the fact that the amount of quality time that a couple can spend with each other doesn't have to be a lot for it to be quality.
Yes.
You can spend time together and it be poor quality time, and you don't have that connection. But similarly, you could have 10 minutes of really quality time, and that could be enough to fill the relationship cup, so to speak, for the next week to come.
Yes.
So how important is it to just prioritize the quality over the quantity?
So thank you for saying that, because it's surprising how many couples have to explain to that, just because you're at home does not mean that you're spending quality time with each other. So the quality of the time matters a lot more than the quantity of the time. And we must be realistic. Some people say, oh, but we go on holiday twice a year. You can't wait for holiday in 6 months' time for your marriage to grow stronger, for your bond to strengthen and to feel more connected. So it's the little things we do, whether it's how we say goodbye to each other in the morning, whether there's time for a quick check-in during the day, whether you can find time to squeeze in a cup of coffee. And when you're parents, it might differ. So maybe you're not going out for dinner because you're exhausted by the end of the day and you don't have anything to give to each other. So something I suggest to lots of parents, especially when there are 2 kids under the age of 5 and they struggle with this. So do something in the morning. So if your kid's at school or childcare, that is the time. Nobody needs to know, by the way, that you went for a walk on the beach or you've met for breakfast together. Because sometimes, you're refreshed in the morning. You don't have to worry about childcare if your kids are taken care of during that time. You don't have to find a babysitter in the evening. So it's also being more creative about where to find this time. But also use the time available to you, like, having a ritual that when you put the baby down, you'll just take 5 minutes, or try, if it's possible, to get to bed at the same time, so there's some pillow talk before bed. So this means you feel close and connected to each other.
How necessary is a structure? So at 8 o'clock every night or 10 minutes before bed every night, we do this thing. And then there's 2 schools of thought. There's the one which doesn't mind the structure of it, and then there's the other school of thought which is, I would prefer to be more organic, and I want it to flow naturally. Do you have anything to say about those 2 schools of thought when it comes to slotting these things in?
So yeah, different people prefer different things, and you've got to consider which one works for you. So is it flowing? If you want to go with the flow, are you finding the time to connect? Or does it feel like it's a last, it's, if everything else is done, then we make time for each other. So I think it's having an honest conversation about how each of you feel like a priority. There's some people that just don't like structure, don't like to be bogged down by it. So I think consider what both options are, but be honest if not having the structure is not working for you, or look at what else might work. And you can have structure while being flexible, and that might be a good middle ground, which is, let's say we'll do 8 o'clock every day. But if something else happens, or you're just tired at 8 o'clock and would prefer to go to bed earlier, we can suggest a different time.
Yeah.
So that might be a healthy middle ground for both.
Okay. You touched on something earlier with respect to, and what I thought of was intimacy. So your physical contact points with your partner, how you say goodbye, how you say good morning, cuddling on the couch, watching a series, that sort of thing. So what tools, tricks, etc. can people start to implement if they've noticed that they're not as intimate as they used to be? And what can they do to try and revive that aspect of their marriage?
Intimacy is not just what happens in the bedroom. There's intimacy out of the bedroom as well. It's knowing what your partner's love language is, recognizing their physiological and hormonal changes in a woman, and like you've mentioned, the sleep deprivation. So it's understanding each other, but knowing that you want to feel connected. So it's both parties ensuring they're meeting the other's needs, not their own needs. So I think sometimes we want to show love in the way that we want to receive love without recognizing your partner might want something different from you, and they might value something different. So I think intimacy and affection needs to be shown in different areas. Like I said, it's the how you say good morning or how you say goodbye. It's the checking in whether they've eaten. It's making someone a cup of coffee at a certain time if you know that is what they would like. It's taking something off the other's plate. So what do they feel? It's, sharing a genuine compliment, showing appreciation. So these are things that help you feel close and connected. And it's easier then to make time for intimacy when you're feeling loved in other aspects of your life. I don't know what the reason is, but for most men, their love language is physical affection. That's just what it seems to be. I work with lots of people, individuals and couples, and across the board, that seems to be men's love language. And sometimes it gets tough because women also say all he thinks about is sex. But the reality is that is the way he feels connected to you, So it might be an unfair comment you're making. So I think the discussion needs to be how your needs are met, and it is okay to schedule time for intimacy.
Yeah. Is it okay to schedule time like that? Because that's something that in movies and in social media and things like that, and even perhaps when you're younger, that organic, authentic, spontaneous level of intimacy is there, and that's what's being sold as well in movies, etc. Yeah. Is it okay that you schedule something like that? So
we know that movies rarely depict real life, especially when it comes to romance, right? So if it's not happening, if the intimacy just isn't happening because you're in a different phase in your life, you're in a very difficult phase of your life where there isn't a lot of time and energy, and ideally, it should be spontaneous, but if it can't be, it's okay that if this is what your need is at the time, if you both agree on it. Because something tends to happen when you know it's scheduled. It's maybe you feel differently about yourself in that day. Maybe you're more affectionate to your partner because there is some kind of build-up that happens anyway. So you might tend to start feeling closer knowing that it's coming.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Instead of seeing it as a chore, I think it shouldn't be something else on the list that we have to check off.
Yes. Would there be like a transition period with something like that? So you meet together as a couple and you say, okay, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try this out for a few weeks. Is it something that you should give time before and just let it sink in a little bit, and then it might develop into something that's more spontaneous down the line and less of a chore, for the want of a better phrase?
Yes, so I think when you're feeling connected, then it might become spontaneous. And also, as your child maybe grows, as different factors come into play, it doesn't mean that if it's scheduled, this is the only time this happens.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It can happen at other times, but at least you know this is happening at this time. And I think always revisit it. Is this working for you? And it might not work for you, and that's okay. You can find something else that works. But give it a chance to see if it works for you. And over weeks and months, maybe there isn't a need for that anymore because things are just flowing spontaneously anyway.
Yeah. You mentioned patterns that you see in your practice, like, for example, males' type of love language. Have you noticed any patterns and variety with respect to culture and how that affects the family dynamic of being new parents? Because we have quite a wide and diverse range of listeners, and Durban and KZN is a very diverse place culturally. So do you notice any traditional patterns with how different cultures approach new parenthood?
So similarities and differences, interestingly, I guess as life changes and there's more information available to us. So I think one difference that is very typical, but not across the board, is I think with more collectivistic cultures, so Black, Indian, colored families, there tends to be a lot more support available from family, extended family. So support is more readily available. So that means a couple might have time together because they're grandparents that are easily accessible to them, for example. Or there might be an aunt who takes care of a baby during the day so mom can return to work and they know that the baby is safe. So that is something that I've noticed. Lots of in-law dynamics come into play. There's some things I used to think were brown people problems. And as I work with, again, the diversity, especially in KZN, I realized that some things are pervasive. So while maybe many Indian women struggle with boundary issues or they feel their husbands don't have healthy boundaries with their parents, it might be the other way around. So in many white families, I realize it's the husband having issues with the mother-in-law, or the mother-in-law's involvement. So those are some of the things that I've noticed. But I would not say everything is across the board, because life is changing. Some people are moving away from home. They don't have support systems that they might have had in the past.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate observation. And I just want to take this time, if my mother-in-law is listening, I love you very much. That stereotype doesn't apply to me. So I hope you're well in Burn Valley. That's such a key point. And I think that's very pertinent to the diversity that we have. If Instagram was deleted tomorrow and all your posts disappeared and all your advice disappeared with respect to new parenthood and transitioning into the family unit, what advice would you give them if you had 1 minute? Mm-hmm. What would you say?
Fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
Yes.
So yeah, if I had 1 minute, I think it would be prioritize your relationship with your partner. That is the best thing you could do for your children for a few reasons. The first reason is when there's warmth, love, affection, and peace in the home, children feel more emotionally secure. The second is we are our children's first role models because we are who they're exposed to most of the time. So whatever they see becomes normality for them.
Yes.
So when they witness healthy relationships, healthy communication, conflict resolution, they are more likely to learn these skills because we don't have a platform to learn these skills anyway, right?
Yeah.
Nobody teaches us how to do it. So we learn from what we observe. So if you work on having a strong, healthy bond with your partner, your children not only feel safe and secure, but they learn this from you and they will go on to have healthier relationships in their lives.
Yeah, I love that. What a wonderful answer. Tell me about, red flags. Okay, so you mentioned earlier the health of a marriage prior to a bundle of joy coming into the home is essential. If there are cracks in that marriage, things that haven't been dealt with effectively prior to the child, then you throw that into the mix, and then those cracks are going to become gaping holes. And that's the weaknesses in the marriage, for the want of a better term, are going to be exacerbated. What are some red flags if there's people listening to this, young families, young husband and wife, and they're listening to this and they're not sure if maybe they need to get some assistance? What are some of the red flags as to, okay, it's time that we see a marriage counselor?
So maybe a useful way of looking at it, if there is a bigger proportion of negative interactions to positive interactions, that would be a big red flag. So if you had to look at a marriage as a bank account, and if all you did was making withdrawals, so every time you complain, every time you criticize, you're making withdrawals. But if there aren't enough deposits, and deposits would be sharing affection, showing appreciation to each other, bonding time, little acts of kindness for your partner. So if there's more negative than positive, then that is a red flag, and that is time that you should get some help.
Okay. And what about if your marriage is good, things are going well, the family is secure, you've transitioned nicely, but maybe you start to notice that maybe your partner isn't coping as well as you might have originally thought.
Yes.
It's not necessarily that they're lashing out or making you feel a certain way. Maybe you can see that they are trying their best, but your husband or your wife, you can see that they're not coping. What are some red flags? And maybe it might differ from a female to a male, but could you shed some light on that, on when to say, hey, my darling, or hey, my love, I think we need to just chat about things. You seem like you're not yourself.
So we'd look for any marked changes in behavior. So of course sleep is disrupted anyway, but we would look at big changes. Maybe they want to sleep all of the time, or maybe they cannot sleep even if they're tired, if there's significant changes in appetite, significant changes in their mood. This could be just feeling down, depressed, tearful, or very irritable and snappy, or if they feel really disconnected or struggling to bond with the baby. So those are the things that we would look, are they more withdrawn? Are there many changes in their behavior such that they're not doing things that they would usually do? or they don't find joy in their things they found joy in previously.
Yeah. The things that they usually do, I like that you brought that up. How important is self-care? So we've spoken about, okay, meet together as a couple, have some adult time as a husband and wife. How important is the sanctity of the two individuals, that they get their own time to do their own things so that they can come back to the marriage being able to project positivity forward?
And this is important even before baby comes along, but even more important because you have a baby that you want to be present for. So there's often a lot of guilt about self-care. But putting yourself first is sometimes really important for how you show up in other roles. So as a wife or husband or as a parent. So self-care needs to be very basic first, right? Before we do the things that we have fun doing. So it's like ensuring, are you getting a good night's sleep? Are you getting to move your body in some way? Are you getting enough rest, good nutrition? And then we look at, are you doing little things that you've enjoyed doing in the past that you haven't had time for? So it might not be the same. It's probably not going to be the same. But even in smaller doses, think about what it is that's meaningful for you. And self-care is different for everyone. What we find useful is different. So when you do that, and there's often a large amount of mom guilt, and there is dad guilt, because yes, that is a thing when we're doing things independently. But when we realize that we're feeling well rested, we're in a better mood, we show up better for our partner. We're in a better mood, we're more connected, we're more present with our child. So we certainly show up better when we've taken care of ourselves first.
Yeah, okay. Dad guilt, tell me about that.
So it is a term that I've started to hear more recently. So it's, we often talk about mom guilt, for example, if the mom goes to work, or even if she's a stay-at-home mom and, just once in a while going out with her friends, there's a large amount of mom guilt. But dads really do feel guilty about not being able to be there for their kids if they're the one that's working working all of the time, or if they are the primary breadwinner in the home. They are doing it for their family, and they know they're doing it for their family, but there might be the guilt of having to miss a sports match or missing some, the first. So baby's taken their first steps and you've missed that. So certainly there is a lot of guilt, and they might have to process it and remembering why they're working and finding other ways in which they can show up for the child. And like we spoke about quality versus quantity in the marital relationship, it's also with your child. Because if you're stressed with your child, you could be on your phone trying to do many things, it doesn't matter. But if you spend less time, but the quality of the time is really good, meaning you're completely connected and you're bonding with them, then that matters a lot more than how much of time you're spending with them.
Okay. Tell me about, in your experience, how the two different genders adjust to parenthood. So are there any differences between how mothers and fathers typically experience these challenges or changes to the expansion of the family unit?
I think what influences this, again, is how we grew up in the home in which we've grown up.
Okay.
What we were exposed to and what we see as a normal family. So most people who marry each other tend to somehow come from different kinds of backgrounds where there were different family dynamics. So, and that influences how we see it. But things have changed over time. And so one partner might forget, for example, the husband might forget that his mom was a stay-at-home mom and maybe could do more than the wife is able to do because perhaps she also works. So I think it's the recognition of where do the expectations that we have of each other and of our own roles come from. Traditionally, most men saw their role in the home as being the provider. But we now have access to a lot of information. We can watch a podcast, we can read a book, so we have expert information at our fingertips, and we know that children need to bond with both parents. So, your role, for example, as a father isn't just that of a provider. So I think it's recognizing where do the beliefs come from and how do we adapt them to what we know today and what is best for our family.
And I think to elaborate on that, what is also important is then communicating that to your partner. So I think communication is very important in understanding where the other person's head is at when it comes to defining the rules of the game.
Yeah, so maybe it's, oh, how do you see your role as a dad? Or what do you think would be best for Grayson?
Yes, I like that.
Right. And often when, I do this exercise with couples, their expectations of their own and the other's role is often different. Again, goes back to how they were raised and what was normalized for them. So it's, for example, my parents beat me up if I did something wrong, and, I don't see anything wrong with disciplining a child in that way. But it doesn't mean because your parents did it that it was the right thing to do.
Yes.
And so always especially when there's a mismatch in what you think should be happening, go back to what would you like? What is the outcome we're fighting for? So you want a well-adjusted child, right? So it's recognizing that's what we have in common. Maybe we have different ideas about it. Who can we turn to if there's a disagreement? Like, again, maybe here's the podcast that we could listen to get some information about what might be best for the child in this case.
Yeah, I love that. I love the reframing of the correct language. And that is a much more diffusing way of terming it, rather than the judgy way that I said it. Oopsie.
Because there are some people that would say, oh, so you're saying I'm a bad father, and when that's not what you've said.
Correct. I understand completely. Tell me, one of my favorite questions that I ask everybody, and I never tell them about this question before, so are you ready? Is there anything that you've changed your mind on recently? I love this question because it forces you to be self-aware and to be okay with the fact that it's okay to change your mind on something if there's enough evidence to suggest the contrary. So has there been anything that you've changed your mind on? Could be professionally, personally, whatever.
Yeah. So, I think I've been through some major life changes recently, being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was the person, I love my job so much. And I always think, I will never retire. I will work till the day I die because I love my job. And even though I still love my job very much, I realize that I do want to take more time for myself. And it actually enables me to show up better at work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. And that comes back to the self-care.
Yes.
And being able to look after yourself. And if you are in a position where you're positive and you refilling your own cup, then you can project that forward.
Yes.
And when people step into your space, you're giving them your positive energy and your full cup,
Yes.
rather than taking on their different energies.
And not that it's never happened, but I guess when you go through something that impacts you on a daily basis, you realize that your need even changes, that you need a different kind of self-care.
Yes. And then to bring that back to the family unit is being self-aware enough to then notice that this is the thing that's changed.
Yes.
And communicate that to your partner. To be like, hey, I know I said this thing was important to me, and back then it was, but I just want to let you know that that's kind of changed now, and now I actually feel like I'm in a space where I need X, not Y.
Yes, and I think it's so important because we don't want to feel, or sometimes we feel like we're going against our word when we change, but we are going to change and evolve as human beings because situations in life change, and that communication is really important. I know I said this, and at the time I really meant it, but in newer circumstances, I actually think differently about it, and this is what I'd like now.
Yeah.
So there's understanding as well of where it's coming from and why it's important.
And working towards the same goal.
Yes.
Working towards fighting for something,
Yes.
rather than fighting against each other. I love that. That's going to stick out for me when I edit this back. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch? Maybe they want to take a look at your awesome content on social media. If they want to get in touch with you personally and come visit you at your practice, where do people find you?
Yeah, so you will find me on Facebook, Instagram, and believe it or not, TikTok. I never thought I had a TikTok personality, but yes. You will find me on TikTok, Gen X on TikTok. That's difficult. But so at Rakhi Beekrum is where you'll find me.
Wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been thoroughly enjoyable for me. And I know that this is going to be something that's very relevant to a lot of people out there. So thank you very much for the good work that you're doing and for putting all that positivity and great advice out onto the internet and social media where people can get it for free. And you can... I saw an interesting post the other day when people spoke about how they choose what they're going to do. And they said it's through three things, either pain, profit, or passion. And taking your background and what you've learned and what's important to you, and being able to project that to people when you weren't able to receive that when you needed it is such an honorable and valuable thing. So thank you and well done. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone. A huge amount of work and effort goes into producing this podcast, whether it's from the research going into the episode, whether it's finding the guests coming to the location or them being online, to producing the content, edited and putting it in a format that is conducive to your ears and your eyes. And it goes a really, really long way if you can just do me one thing in return for this free content: share it. Share it far and wide, and if you find an episode useful, send it to someone who might feel the same way. That's all. Thanks a million. See you next week.